Hi everyone, I'm Tamiku Eli, the Global Lead for Indigenous People and Local Communities at Edmond Foundation. With the support of John Nelson, we are happy to share with you this short video on the free, prior and informed consent, that is FPIC. For those of our staff who are already used to it, it is a refresher, but for those who are not used to it, it's an opportunity to learn about the FPIC concept. So what is FPIC and what is the history behind the concept of FPIC?
Stands for Free, Prior, and Informed Consent. And it actually constitutes a legal right of Indigenous peoples protected under international law. And this is a principle that applies to all decisions affecting Indigenous communities' communal customary lands. So 4 key concepts. Free, that means that things are being done willingly. No one's forcing people to make decisions or to engage in anything. Prior means information, decision-making happens before something happens to the land or changes are made to the management of the land. Informed means that communities actually have the right to information about what's going to happen to their land, how it's going to be managed, how that's going to impact on their livelihoods attached to that land. And they have to be provided information in an appropriate form. And they have to be given enough time to actually digest that kind of information. And then the final thing is consent. Consent can say yes or no, or yes if you do, or no unless something else happens. So there's different types of consent, but that's consent not just about an endpoint, not just about a decision. We got their consent, we move on. It's about every single engagement with people discussing these aspects. It came out of centuries of struggle between local and Indigenous peoples in particular, and outsiders who have been coming into their areas looking to either acquire their lands or to develop their lands or extract things from them. And ultimately, over many years and decades, and lots of campaigning and lots of work, and a lot of legal work, actually, with legal conventions between international governments around the world, ultimately leading to the proposal for a piece of legislation specifically to define the rights of Indigenous peoples. And that culminated in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which was finally came into force in 2007. And that was based all around the self-determination of Indigenous peoples. And a key component of that is this right to FPIC. That is to be consented about the use of their lands long term.
Although the FPIC concept was initially developed or adopted for indigenous people, based on the principle that underpins its application and the positive aspect of it, it's very important for our teams on the ground to implement it both for local communities and indigenous people in our daily engagement. Adopting FPIC as a working principle means that internally we develop our guidelines and policy that will be used by various teams. It means that while developing our various projects, we should keep in our mind that the concept of the consent of our community is very important, because if we don't have that consent, we may not move with our various projects. And it also means that we have to develop some training material to make sure our team internally clearly understand the concept of FPIC. For our teams, once they are on the field, adopting FPIC means that they should have a clear understanding of the socio-economic system of the environment. They should have a clear understanding of the various stakeholders working around the project, and also have a clear understanding of the decision-making process of the communities. It also means that there should be a clear communication process in place to ensure that our communities, our indigenous people, receive all the information related to a project before giving or withholding their consent. And finally, it means that we have to put in place participatory monitoring system that will help both EF and our various communities to monitor the implementation of the project. Now, for the partners we engage with, we need to really encourage them to put in place, policy and adopt in their daily operations, so that it's become a normal working principle where they have to make sure they get the consent of their various community, they integrate their requests, they integrate their needs, and they work together to implement the various, to avoid this approach of top-down where everything is already developed from the top and the community are just informed about the project. FPIC is not a tool, but a working principle. Compared to participatory mapping, for example, FPIC is just a way of working where we really make sure we got the consent, we consult, we inform, and we got the consent of our communities or indigenous people before moving with projects. In many cases, many people can make confusion between FPIC and land acquisition. FPIC is a working principle that is applied while acquiring land, because we may hear some of people say we have completed our FPIC once their land acquisition process is completed. No, this is wrong. FPIC is a principle that we respect while acquiring land. While implementing FPIC or respecting FPIC, we need to make the difference between the informative approach and the consultative approach. In the informative approach, most of the time we send letters to our communities to inform them about what we want to do. But normally in the consultative approach, we need to ask them their availability. For example, for a meeting, we need to ask to share with them what are the agenda of a meeting we are planning to them before validating a meeting, for example. It is not like sending an information letter or sending information on a project that is already conceived and completed and just ask them to follow the process. We need to really consult and get their feedback that will be integrated in the project. And as a principle, as a working principle, we should always keep in our mind that FPIC should be respected from the beginning to the end of the project, because sometimes at the middle or because a major step of the project have been completed, some people may say, now we have got the consent of the community, we have got the MOU signed with the indigenous people, so FPIC is done. No, it's always apply from the beginning to the end of the project.
And it's not a procedure, so the FPIC procedure. We have a procedure to make sure we safeguard community right to FPIC. That's fine, but it's not a procedure. And it's a legal right which applies to all of our engagements with indigenous peoples, particularly if we're talking about their lands or the management of their lands, the things we're going to do with them on their lands, etc. And so, since it's a legal right, we have a duty of care. We should be protecting that so that communities' rights to that are not violated. So it's a continuous obligation of our teams working on the ground.
Now, let's find out what are some of the major risks if the FPIC principle is not respected in a project.
So there are a number of risks associated with not incorporating safeguards for FPIC or just proper community engagement in projects and in our own work as Earthworm. And one of the key things is one of the big risks for us is that if we don't somehow incorporate safeguards for this into our own work, that we'll be violating actually our own principles as Earthworm. We've committed ourselves at an institutional level to ensuring protections for Indigenous people's rights, and FPIC is a key one. It's the key one that sort of helps guide all kinds of issues. So we want to live up to our own principles. We also don't want to cause any harm. And neither do our partners. And this is what we are working with our partners to address, that we do not want further harm to occur. So actually incorporating this principle of protecting community FPIC into general practice means we'll stop harm all going forward. And that's a fantastic outcome. And then we can look at going backwards. For companies, the impacts can be quite severe if good community engagement based on fairness and protection for rights is not there. You have grievances, first of all, and that's a big framework of some of our work with companies is trying to overcome those grievances and set in place systems. It's like an alarm bell for when things aren't going well. But you also have work stoppages. You can have protests, you can have strikes. All that costs money, but even worse, you have bad PR. It's up on the press. Then you could have legal action, which, in some cases, legal action is a risky business and it's very costly. And at the end, you have a, impact on reputation. And for a lot of our partners, that's about the, overall value. And they, that's going to impinge on the value, or it's going to undermine access to credit on good terms and all that kind of stuff. And so these are major risks. But the biggest risk is that by not doing this, we are all missing a very easy win, because we're not asking for, to incorporate protections, safeguards to protect community FPIC is not really asking a lot. For our own teams, it's simply to codify what they're doing already in most instances. For company teams, it's just to make clear what they should be doing. And this provides a really clear framework. And it's easy. And this protects companies going forward, but also in the addressing and resolving grievances that may be historical or longer term. Committing to safeguarding community FPIC is critical for the long-term resolution of those things, of lots of long-term resolution of conflicts, but also long-term conflicts that have been around.
We hope you enjoyed the video. Considering the specificities of our various regions of operation, if there is a need for any clarification or support to implement this concept, we are there to support you. We are expecting your feedback. Thank you.